Hello, friends. Today I'm going to talk to you about the horse race polls. As you know, this is something I've been commenting on for some time, but today I'm going to take a really deep dive into these kinds of polls. As you know, the keys, I would say for the first time, missed the 2024 election, but the polls also missed this election, just as they have missed most of the important elections over the last few years. While I'm going to talk about the errors in the polls, I'm going to take a much deeper dive. I'm going to talk about the dire implications of modern polling for our politics and our democracy. I'm not taking aim at the pollsters themselves. I'm sure they're doing as good a job as they possibly can. The problem is indeed symptomatic. So let's take a look at the polls. In 2016, the polls missed the Trump win. In fact, the most eminent compiler of polls, the Princeton University Consortium from one of the world's great universities, gave Clinton a 99% chance of winning. In 2020, the horse race polls got the Biden victory right, but they substantially overestimated his voting strength. And then from 2022 through the special elections of 2024, the polls substantially underestimated Democratic voting strength. But look at 2024. The polls gave no indication that Trump would sweep the popular vote and sweep all seven swing states, not by a very small margin in most cases. Now, the pollsters have said, well, we told you the polls are within the margin of error, so we're not really wrong. Think about that. Basically, they're saying the polls are useless. They're noise. They don't tell you anything because they're all within the margin of error. Yet the media jumps on the polls as though, they were gospel, a 1 or 2 point swing, which is well within the margin of error. They trumpet the fact, oh, Trump has leaped ahead or Harris has leaped ahead. So essentially, we have meaningless polls. Moreover, think about this. What are the odds that just randomly, because of the margins of error, the national popular vote would go to Trump? Remember, the pollsters had consistently the popular vote favoring Harris throughout the campaign by as much as 3 points. And what were the odds that all seven of the swing states would go to Trump? Remember, the polls had some favoring Harris, some favoring Trump, and some dead even. I'll tell you this, the odds from random error of all seven swing states and the popular vote going for Donald Trump is a bit like rolling 8 heads in a row or 8 tails in a row from a fair coin. The odds are 1 in 256, very close to zero. And the horse race pollsters have never acknowledged that. Now, here is something really important. This goes very deep to something that I've called the political industrial complex, which has an incredibly pernicious effect on our politics and our democracy, but has the media and the politicians in its grasp. Speaking of the media, I want to talk to you about accuracy and bias in the media. Ground News is a news service that compares media coverage from across the political spectrum. It gathers related articles from around the world in one place so you can compare how different outlets cover the same story with context and visual breakdown about the source of the information, their political bias, how reliable their reporting practices are, and who owns them. These ratings are created through 3 independent news monitoring organizations. Take a look at the story on the Trump team making a list of U.S. officials involved in the Afghanistan withdrawal. Most of that coverage leans Right. You can also see the general factuality trend, as well as the ownerships for this story. 47% of the news outlets are owned by independent news. This headline from right sources focuses on using words to describe the withdrawal like, quote, disastrous, debacle, and even treason, unquote. The left headline focuses on describing Trump's move as an, quote, autocratic move, and they don't use negative terms to describe the withdrawal. The blind spot feed shows you news stories that are disproportionately covered by one side of the political spectrum. You know how much I warn against misinformation. So see through misleading narratives and stay informed without getting overwhelmed. If you subscribe through my link, ground.news/Allan, you'll get 50% off the Vantage plan, which is what I use to get unlimited access to all features. This is the biggest sale of the year and only available for a limited time. I think Ground News is doing important work and they are subscriber supported, so I hope you will check them out. Now, remember I referred to the pernicious effect of the political industrial complex. In 1961, President Dwight Eisenhower, a man who knew and understood war, warned against the grip of the military industrial complex on American life. He said that this complex was sustained by an iron triangle of the munitions makers, the military, and the politicians who wanted military contracts in their states and their districts. I have developed the idea of the political industrial complex, which is sustained by its own iron triangle that perpetuates the idea of an election being like a horse race, with candidates sprinting ahead or falling behind according to the day-to-day events of the campaign, with the pollsters keeping accurate score. At one point on the iron triangle are the pollsters, the ad men, the hucksters, the consultants who make millions of dollars from this horse race theory. Then there is the media who has to cover the election every single day, so buys into the horse race theory scored by the pollsters. Then there are the politicians who are afraid to go against the media, the hucksters, the ad men, the pollsters, and the consultants, because politicians tend to be risk averse. This iron triangle, sustained by the polls and the media and those who benefit from it, has two pernicious effects on our politics and our democracy. First of all, the horse race polling theory of elections promotes today's trivial, soundbite driven, negative, essentially meaningless kinds of campaigns. If we could break that triangle, we could have a very different kind of campaign where candidates talk about substance and vision, which would be great for winning candidates because they would then have a margin, a mandate for enacting their agenda, and even losing candidates, if they campaigned in that way rather than conventionally, would leave their mark on the country. Nobody remembers what conventional campaigners ever had to say except for a few gaffes. Who remembers what candidates had to say, like Hillary Clinton, Mitt Romney, John McCain, John Kerry, Michael Dukakis, Bob Dole? Nobody remembers anything they had to say, and their campaigns become meaningless footnotes to history. On the other hand, even some major losing candidates have made their mark on history through their forthright, principled, substantive campaigns. Barry Goldwater in 1964 was swamped in a landslide by Lyndon Johnson, but his expression of conservative principles has influenced conservatives right through our own time. You could say the same thing about liberalism for George McGovern, who was swamped by Richard Nixon in 1972. The other way in which this iron triangle has a pernicious effect on our democracy is that it focuses on the polls, which for the most part are absolutely meaningless. Now, that may seem harmless, good fun, sports talk radio, but it's not, because it sacrifices coverage of the media telling us the truth in this age of immense disinformation. The media has copped out on that, and it sacrifices the media uh, providing information on the real consequences of elections. The media spends vastly more time on empty, meaningless polls within the uh, Iron Triangle as opposed to telling truth to power and explaining to the American people what an election really means. And that is a tragedy for our politics and our democracy. Again, I'm not attacking personally the pollsters. A lot of them are my friends. But I have suggested for many years that during a presidential election year, we should send all the horse race pollsters on vacation to a wonderful tropical island deep in the Pacific Ocean with no internet access. Think about what that could do for our politics. Thanks for listening.